The laughter started before she said a single word. She was 14 years old, standing at a podium built for adults, her prepared remarks in a folder she'd spent 6 weeks writing. The microphone was too high. She reached up to adjust it, and that was the moment, the small mechanical struggle of a small girl at a big podium, when the back third of the ballroom broke. Not cruel laughter. The crowd told themselves that later. Just the involuntary kind, the kind that rises when something strikes a room as charming and slightly absurd. But Amara Osei heard what it was. She had grown up hearing exactly that register of sound and knowing exactly what it meant. She steadied the microphone. She opened her folder. She looked out at 400 people in a grand hotel ballroom, and she let the room settle. What those 400 people did not know, what the program organizers, the corporate sponsors, and the 3 adult keynote speakers who had preceded her did not know, was that Amara Osei had not come to this stage to survive it. She had come to own it. And by the time she spoke her last sentence, every person in that room would be on their feet. 2 years earlier, Amara Osei had been the kind of girl who did her best work where nobody was looking. She was 12 then, the middle child of 3 in a household on the east side of Delton. Her mother, Priya, a hospital administrator who worked long hours and kept a running list of everything that needed doing. Her father, Kwame, a high school history teacher who had been assigning his students primary sources since before it was fashionable and believed, with a conviction he passed along at the dinner table, that the most important skill a person could develop was the ability to make an argument nobody could walk away from. Amara had absorbed that conviction the way children absorb the things that are repeated and meant. She wrote constantly, not for school, though she did well there, but because she had things to say and the only way she'd found to say them properly was to write them down first. She kept notebooks, not journals. She was precise about the distinction. Journals were for feelings. Notebooks were for thinking. She filled them with arguments, questions, observations, drafts, and revisions of ideas. She wasn't ready to speak aloud yet because she hadn't gotten them right. Her English teacher, a woman named Mrs. Calloway who had been teaching 7th grade for 19 years, read Amara's first submitted essay of the year and asked her to stay after class, not because anything was wrong, because she wanted to look at the student who had written it and understand what she was dealing with. She told Amara the essay was the strongest analytical writing she had seen from a middle schooler in her 19 years of teaching, and that she would like Amara's permission to share it with the school's debate and oratory coach. Amara sighed she could share the essay. She said it didn't mean she wanted to speak in front of anyone. Mrs. Calloway said she understood. She shared it anyway because 19 years had taught her the difference between what students said they wanted and what they were ready for. The debate and oratory coach was a man named Mr. Tillman. He had run the program at Delton Middle School for 11 years and had sent 3 students to state finals. He read Amara's essay on a Thursday afternoon and called Mrs. Calloway that evening to say it was the most clearly structured argument he'd seen from a student since a girl named Kezia, who had gone on to win the state championship in persuasive speaking 4 years prior. He invited Amara to observe a practice session, not to participate, just to watch. She came on a Tuesday and sat in the back row and watched 6 students she recognized from the halls argue about infrastructure policy for 90 minutes. She said nothing. She came back the following Tuesday and sat in the same seat. On the 3rd Tuesday, Mr. Tillman handed her a topic card at the start of practice and asked her to prepare a 2-minute opening argument before the session ended. She looked at the card for a long moment. She sighed. 2 minutes isn't enough time to make a real argument. Mr. Tillman said she had 78 minutes to figure out how to do it anyway. She gave her 2-minute argument at the end of that session. She stood in front of 6 classmates and the coach, and she spoke. Her voice was steady and her structure was clean, and her conclusion landed with the particular force of a sentence that has been revised until every unnecessary word is gone, and what remains is exactly what needs to be there. 3 of the 6 classmates applauded without being prompted. That was unusual enough that Mr. Tillman noted it in his session log. After the session, Amara stayed to ask him a question. She wanted to know what the difference was between an argument that was technically correct and an argument that moved people. She had, she said, been thinking about this for a long time. Mr. Tillman told her she had just asked the question that separated adequate speakers from great ones. and that the answer was going to take longer than one conversation. She sighed that was fine. She had notebooks. Over the next 14 months, Amara Osei became the kind of student that coaches talk about in the hallways with a careful kind of excitement. The excitement of someone who has seen something rare and is trying not to disturb it by naming it too loudly. She won her first in-school competition 2 months into the program. She placed second at the district invitational behind an 8th grader who had been competing for 3 years and who shook her hand afterward with an expression of genuine respect. She lost twice at regional tournaments and came home from both losses with her notebooks open before the car had cleared the parking lot, dissecting exactly where and why. Not to punish herself, but because she genuinely wanted to understand the machinery of what hadn't worked. After the first loss, she wrote 3 pages on transitions. After the second, she wrote 6 pages on the moment she had reached for emotion before she'd finished building the argument. The moment the speech asked the audience to feel something it hadn't yet been given reason to feel. She titled that entry, "Don't Ask for the Feeling. Build the Road to It." Mr. Tillman found that entry. She had left the notebook on the practice room table by accident, and he read it and set it back down, and did not mention it to her directly. But the following Tuesday, Harry structured the entire session around the exact concept she had described, drawing it out through exercises he designed that afternoon. And when the session ended and the other students had left, he told Amara that the entry she'd written was more analytically precise about persuasive structure than most of the textbooks he used. She retrieved the notebook from the table and said, "I left it there on purpose." He laughed. He said he'd figured as much. Mr. Tillman later said that was when he understood she was going to be exceptional. Not the wins, the losses. And not even the losses, the notebooks she failed in the hours after them. Alone, without complaint, building the argument for why she hadn't yet earned the result she wanted, and exactly what she was going to do about it. In the late spring of her second year with the program, a notice came to the school from the Delton Regional Business Alliance, an organization of local companies and civic groups that ran an annual youth empowerment conference. They were seeking a student speaker for the keynote evening session. The student would be one of 4 speakers on the program. The other 3 were established professionals with titles and track records. The conference drew 400 attendees, including corporate executives, city officials, and community leaders. The submission process required a writing sample, a faculty recommendation, and a brief recorded audition speech. Mr. Tillman submitted Amara's application on a Friday afternoon. He told her he'd done it on Monday morning. She was quiet for a moment after he told her. Then she asked what the topic parameters were. It told her the theme was the next generation of leadership and that the student speaker was given full latitude on angle and approach. Amara nodded slowly. She wrote something in her notebook and didn't share it. 3 weeks later, the conference coordinator sent a letter to Delton Middle School confirming that Amara Osei had been selected as the student speaker for the keynote evening session of the Delton Regional Business Alliance Youth Empowerment Conference. Mr. Tillman put the letter on her chair before the Tuesday session. She read it. She set it face down on the seat beside her. She stood up in front of the room and said, "Can we do argument structure today? I want to work on the transition from evidence to implication." He laughed. He said yes. For 6 weeks, Amara worked on the speech the way she had always worked on everything important, iteratively, precisely, and in private. She wrote 11 drafts, not 11 versions of the same speech. 11 different arguments about what leadership meant, what the next generation was inheriting, and what she specifically, at 14 years old, with her specific vantage point, had to say about both that no adult on that stage could say from the same place. She eliminated 10 of them. Each elimination was its own entry in the notebook, not a dismissal, but an autopsy. This argument is technically correct, but it doesn't have a center. This one is emotionally right, but I haven't earned it yet. This one assumes the audience already agrees with me. That's not an argument. That's a confirmation. The 11th draft was 4 minutes and 40 seconds long. She timed it to the second. She practiced it 43 times, in front of the bathroom mirror, in the living room, when her parents were at work, in front of Mr. Tillman twice, and once in front of Mrs. Calloway, who cried quietly at the 3rd minute and tried to keep it from showing. She did not practice it in front of her classmates, not because she didn't trust them, but because she wanted the speech to feel unrehearsed when it mattered. Found in the room, not retrieved from memory. There was a difference, Mr. Tillman had told her, between a speech you remembered and a speech you believed, and the audience could always tell which one they were watching. She believed this one. She had built it to be believed. The night of the conference, Amara arrived at the Caldwell Grand Hotel in a dress her mother had taken her to find the previous Saturday. Navy blue, and her hair pulled back. She looked exactly like what she was, a 14-year-old who had prepared more carefully than anyone in that hotel would understand until it was too late to be surprised by her. The ballroom was everything the Caldwell Grand promised on its website. High ceilings, crystal chandeliers throwing warm light across white tablecloths. The particular hum of 400 people in the first hour of an evening that had been planned well. The corporate banners of the Alliance's sponsors lined the back wall. The stage at the front was low and wide, lit from above and from the sides, the kind of stage that made adult speakers look authoritative and would make a 14-year-old look small. Amara noted this when Gerald Holt walked her through the staging area. She did not say anything about it. The conference director, a man named Gerald Holt, met her in the staging area behind the main ballroom and went through the logistics with her. The podium, the microphone, the light sequence. It was professional and polite, and he said the right things. "We're so pleased to have you, and the audience is really excited to hear from the student perspective." But he said them in the register adults use when they are performing encouragement rather than feeling it. And Amara, who had grown up in a household with a history teacher for a father and had spent 2 years studying the architecture of how arguments landed, heard the difference. She didn't comment on it. She thanked him. She reviewed the stage setup. She noted where the lighting fell flattest and adjusted her planned eyeline accordingly. She asked once about the microphone height and was told it would be managed before she was introduced. It was not managed. The first 3 speakers took the stage in sequence: a local executive, a city council member, a regional nonprofit director. All polished, all prepared, all speaking from the comfortable authority of people who had been in rooms like this many times. The audience was warm and attentive. The applause after each was genuine. Then the conference director returned to the podium and introduced the student speaker. There was a shift in the room. The quality of the attention changed, from engaged to indulgent. The particular attention you give to a child performing, which is different from the attention you give to someone with something to say. Amara walked onto that stage. She was 14, and she was small, and the microphone was too high. Exactly as she had flagged and been assured it would not be. And when she reached up to adjust it, the back third of the room laughed. Let it be said clearly, they laughed. Not with malice. They would tell themselves that later, and some of them would be right. But in that moment, the laughter said what it said. It said, "Here is something charming and small, not something serious. Eder is a child at an adult's podium, which is sweet, but let's not mistake it for the real program." Amara heard all of it. She finished adjusting the microphone. She set her folder on the podium and opened it to the first page. She looked out at 400 people in a ballroom full of chandelier light and white tablecloths, and the particular comfort of people who belong completely to the room they're in. And then she was quiet for a moment. Not from nerves, anyone watching her closely could see that, but deliberately, the silence of a competitor who has learned that the space before the first word is not empty. It is the last moment you have to decide who is in charge of the room. She had learned that from Mr. Tillman, and before him from her father, and before him from the notebooks. She spoke. The speech opened on a question. Not a rhetorical question, a real one, the kind that doesn't have an easy answer and knows it. She asked the room what it meant to lead something you have not yet been given permission to lead. She asked it simply, without performance, and let it sit in the air for exactly 3 seconds. By the end of the second paragraph, the indulgent attention had shifted. She could feel it, not as ego, but as information. The quality of the silence had changed. 400 people who had been leaning back were beginning to lean forward. She moved through the speech the way a master technician moves through complex work. No wasted motion, every transition earned. Evidence leading to implication, leading to the moment where the argument becomes something the listener feels rather than just follows. She talked about what her generation was inheriting, not abstractly, not in the vague language of motivational speaking, but specifically With data she had looked up herself and context she had thought about carefully and an honesty about the weight of it that no adult speaker that night had attempted. Because adults in rooms like this tend toward the inspirational and away from the true. In the third minute, she said something that the room was not prepared for. She said, "The adults in this room built things that will outlast you. Some of them are things you're proud of. Some of them are problems you handed to us and called them opportunities, because opportunity is what you call a problem when you won't be the one solving it." The room went very still. Not offended, arrested. The stillness of 400 people processing a thing that has just been said clearly and without apology by someone who has earned the right to say it and knows it. She let it land. She didn't soften it. She moved forward. The fourth and final minute was not indictment. It was argument, the actual argument she had been building toward, the one she had been writing and rewriting for 6 weeks and 43 rehearsals, about what leadership looked like when you hadn't been given the room yet and you showed up anyway, about what it meant to prepare for a world that had not decided to take you seriously yet, about the particular discipline of someone who spends 14 years hearing the world tell them to wait and decides on a Tuesday night in a ballroom full of people who laughed when she adjusted the microphone that they have waited long enough. She did not say this as anger. She said it as a statement of fact. In the last sentence, she looked up from her folder for the first time since the first paragraph. She looked at the room directly, the way Mr. Tillman had spent 14 months teaching her to look at a room, not performing, not hoping, but present, with the full weight of everything she had prepared behind her eyes. She finished. For one full second, the Caldwell Grand Hotel ballroom was completely silent. Then the woman at the table nearest the stage stood up. She didn't applaud it right away. She just stood, the way you stand when your body has done something before your mind has caught up to it. Then the man beside her. Then a row in the center of the room, rippling outward. Then the back third that had laughed 47 minutes earlier, rising. And the sound building from a smattering to a current to something that felt, in that ballroom with its high ceilings and its chandeliers, like the room itself was answering her. 400 people, on their feet. Not one of the other 3 speakers had received a standing ovation. Not the executive, not the council member, not the nonprofit director with 20 years of civic credentials and a podium built to his height. Amara stood at the microphone and looked at the room and did not smile immediately. She let the moment be what it was for 2 full seconds before she allowed herself to receive it. Because she had learned that too, from her notebooks, from her father, from 14 months of competition, that the moment of arrival, real arrival, deserved more than a reflex. It deserved to be felt all the way through. Then she smiled. And it was the smile of someone who has just proven, at 14 years old, in front of 400 people who laughed when she adjusted a microphone, exactly what they came to prove. She closed her folder. She stepped back from the podium. She walked off the stage to where Mr. Tillman was standing in the wings, and he did not say anything for a long moment. And she did not say anything either, because there was nothing that needed to be added to what had just happened. He put his hand on her shoulder. That was all. Gerald Holt, the conference director who had spoken to her in the particular register adults use when performing encouragement, found her in the staging area afterward. His expression had changed. He sighed without preamble. "That was the best speech given in this room in the 9 years I have run this conference. I want you to know that." He said it like a man correcting something. Like the earlier performance of encouragement was no longer something he could stand behind. Amara thanked him. 2 weeks later, the Delton Regional Business Alliance posted the full video of her speech on their website and social platforms. The conference director wrote in the accompanying note that the student speaker had delivered what he called one of the most surprising and accomplished moments in the event's history. The video was shared 600 times in its first week. Mr. Tillman forwarded her the share count on a Thursday. She replied, "I'm working on a new speech." The structure on the third transition was wrong. He laughed for a long time at that. Her parents watched the video together at the kitchen table on a Sunday morning. Her father watched it twice. On the second watch, he posted near the end, the moment before she looked up from her folder, and he said quietly to Priya, "She found it in the room. That's what I hoped she'd do." Priya sighed she was going to cry. A sighed he already had. Amara Osei went on to win the state oratory championship the following year. She spoke at her 8th grade graduation, her high school's Model UN conference, and, 2 years after the Caldwell Grant, returned to the Delton Regional Business Alliance Conference as an invited keynote speaker. Not student speaker, keynote, on the same stage. With a microphone that had been set to the right height before she walked out, she adjusted it anyway, not because it needed it, but because she had decided it was hers now, that stage and everything on it, and she would arrange it the way she chose. The room did not laugh this time. They were already leaning forward,